stripes and bright stars through the perilous fight, o'er the ramparts we watched were so gallantly streaming, and the rockets' red glare, the bombs bursting in air, gave proof through the night that our flag was still there. Oh, say does that star-spangled banner yet wave o'er the land of the free and the home of the brave?
Brunonians, those who will, let us pray. Illumination of the heart and mind, animation of justice, metric of the good. We rise together in these moments of beginning, seeking blessing and worthy purpose. In this new space, at once unlikely and hallowed, gratefully, carefully, we call to heart and to mind the legacy of the generations who, like us, converged within these gates, and now upon whose shoulders we stand. We recall the dearness and sacrifice of families, the generosity of benefactors, the dedication of teachers, coaches, deans. We remember the dreams of our grandmothers and the high obligations we bear for those whose futures will be built on the wisdom and industry of this, our generation. We, this rising generation, daughters and, yes, sons of Providence, new residents of College Hill and Brunonia's halls, together we raise our voice to speak gratitude and blessing for the gift and the tenure beginning of Brown's new president, asking for her ever brighter skies, slightly less dampness, and years of productive leadership for this great and beloved university. Hear our thanksgiving for the privilege to stand together on this threshold of all that is to be. Receive and delineate the shape of this new season with indelible justice, with compassion, so that we will find our work so marked and so known that our irreverence will be a commitment to discard the clouds of convention, to make clear the new contours of freedom and conscience. May the beauty and depth of our convictions and culture gently press out of the way the expedient. May the blessing of this place be not one of removal, but rather a place of immersion in the rigors of all need, of all demand, of all challenge. And may our work yield authentic remedy. May the invitation of these gates today gently, rigorously, intentionally place us each in each other's care and keeping. And may we prove the worth of such rare privilege by striving together to become a blessing in the lives of one another and in the life of the world you love, that we may discharge, as we are called, the offices of life with usefulness and reputation. Amen. Please be seated.
Chancellor Tisch, Chancellor Emeritus Jakowski, Provost Schlissel, trustees and fellows, senior officers, deans, faculty, staff, students, alumni, and friends of Brown, as the 19th president of Brown University, it is my great pleasure to declare the 249th academic year of Brown University open. the 1,541 members of Brown's greatest ever class of 2016. To the 620 graduate students who are beginning their studies here. To the newest 120 students in the Warren Albert School of Medicine. Woo! To the 64 newly arrived students who had the great good sense to transfer to Brown. And to my 56 new colleagues who are beginning professional academic life at this university. Welcome to an extraordinary university at an extraordinary time in our almost 250-year history. I am so happy to be sharing my inaugural year with you. Who exactly are the new students we welcome today? Already, we know a great deal about you. You are not a random gathering of people, but a community standing for ideals that we hold sacred. That the pursuit of education is noble. That the right to learn should not be limited by the ability to pay. That diversity is far more than a legal concept or a mathematical equation, but a profoundly ethical belief that our differences enlighten and enhance us. The class of 2016, the largest group here today, is nothing if not different in the very best sense of the word. You are a walking, talking, Googling cross-section of humanity. Let me be a little more specific. There are 1,541 of you, 840 men, 840 women, and 701 men. You come from 49 out of 50 states. Sorry, Nebraska. You represent 57 nations from Albania to Yemen. All of the major racial and ethnic groups are represented, including 111 who fall into the interesting category unknown. 46% of you, nearly half, receive some form of financial aid. Those of you who begin your association with Brown at a point beyond the freshman year, graduate students, medical students, transfers, resumed undergraduate education students, you bring an even deeper diversity to the campus community. From 20-somethings to married with children, your presence in your work in our classrooms, our labs, affiliated hospitals will energize and enrich intellectual life at Brown. Even though I've only been here for a few months, I've found that Brown already has a very special place in my heart for its people, its history, and its values. I love Brown's distinctive approach to learning and to life. It's not a cookie-cutter philosophy of sameness, but rather something very different, just the opposite, a constructive irreverence that makes every day very interesting. Today, I'd like to talk about that constructive irreverence, where it comes from, and how it enlightens us. The book the entering undergraduates read this summer, Sons of Providence, helped me appreciate how deeply Brown's origins have shaped the university we see today. The origins may seem remote, but they still guide us, just as we move within a physical campus designed by Brown's founders and their successors. In those early days, nearly 250 years ago, it was a tiny college with very large ambitions. The first president, James Manning, came to you, as I did, from the wilds of New Jersey. For a time, he constituted the entire faculty, while the student body consisted of a single student, William Rogers, who was all of 14 years old. And we think the 9-to-1 student-teacher ratio we have now is good. Tuition didn't cover many of the college's expenses, especially since tuition was only $12 a year in those years, another $5 for room and board. But the small institution persevered, and eventually it prospered. By the time Brown was founded, Rhode Island had already established itself as a place of ill repute, at least as far as the Blue Noses of Boston were concerned. Cotton Mather scornfully referred to Rhode Island as the, quote, latrina of New England. You don't have to concentrate in classics to know what that means. But the main reason the Boston Puritans disliked Rhode Island is something that we actually celebrate to this day. Rhode Island's colonial charter permitted a, quote, lively experiment to flourish and demanded that no person be punished for his or her religious views. Rhode Island soon became a very congenial haven for iconoclasts. If anything defined Rhode Island at all, it was simply that everyone had the same right to constructive irreverence, or as some called it, heresy. In many ways, Brown's freedom descends from those early ideals. The Baptists behind Brown's creation were hostile to hierarchies, and they sought to create a different kind of college. When it came time to write Brown's charter, the university's founders defined it as a, quote, liberal and Catholic, with a small c, institution, with no tests of religious or political correctness, and insisted that all the members shall forever enjoy free, full, absolute, and uninterrupted liberty of conscience. Of course, as Sons of Providence makes clear, that liberty was not universal. At the time of Brown's founding, America was just beginning to question the morality of the slave trade. African Americans, as well as women and members of many other groups, were not welcome as students. But the principles that were set in place early on paved the way for the more complete understanding of freedom that would come in time. The argument over slavery took place within halls of government, the popular press, and families, or in the case of the Brown family, within all three. The brothers Moses and John were often at odds over this issue. Each achieved his own form of irreverence, John towards British authority at the time of the American Revolution, Moses towards John and the institution of slavery. Moses, by taking that brave stand, called into question some of the most ingrained social norms that prevailed at that time. As the book illustrates, the debate was often bitter. The wrangling over legislation on the slave trade was riddled with backdoor deals and politicking. There were vitriolic and personal attacks written by people on both sides of the issue, which were published anonymously in Providence newspapers. If you put aside the fact that the debate was conducted in person and in print and not broadcast over the world via tweets and blogs, it was not too different from current disagreements over hot-button social issues. But, and this is what I think is important, the part of the debate that focused on facts, ideas, and a serious consideration of moral principles did have a slow but steady effect on society. The ability of men and women to think independently and with open minds was integral to the spread of the abolition movement that changed the world for the better. And this lesson is as relevant today as it's ever been. A few days ago, when I welcomed the members of the class of 2016 and their families, I spoke about the important roles that freedom and responsibility play in a Brown education. We give our undergraduates unparalleled independence, but we don't confuse liberty with license. We expect you to use your freedom in a thoughtful and responsible manner. Our belief is that a combination of freedom and responsibility will let you cultivate the habits of mind that lead to a lifetime of intellectual development and social engagement. Freedom isn't just about studying the subjects that interest you the most. It's also about looking at the world with fresh eyes and challenging existing norms and points of view. And responsibility doesn't just mean taking your subjects seriously. It also means giving the ideas and the people you encounter in your life, even the ones you decide to challenge, the respect that they are entitled to. Being irreverent without respectful, challenging ideas without understanding them, will obstruct your ability to learn. It will ultimately limit your ability to affect change in the world. More immediately, it will annoy your classmates and professors. I learned an early but valuable lesson in constructive irreverence when I was a freshman in college. And it was a small story, as many of these are, but it's one that's really stuck with me. I was taking an introductory course in religious studies, and the class was given the assignment of writing a paper on St. Anselm's ontological proof of the existence of God, something I'm sure many of you have studied carefully. After one very superficial read through the proof, I decided that it was simply preposterous. How could the existence of God be proved simply as a matter of pure logic? I planned to write a scathing attack that would reveal every single flaw in this purported proof. But I quickly discovered that it was much easier to say that the proof was ridiculous than to carefully explain why it was ridiculous. After writing a blazing opening paragraph, I was stuck. I asked a senior I knew, a philosophy major by the name of Dan Schwartz, for some ideas, and he actually gave me some of the best advice I ever received as a student. In a kind way, he said, "Chris, you could do a better job criticizing the proof if you actually understood it." That hurt a little bit. But then he went on to suggest that I write a defense of the proof instead of an attack. What he was asking me to do, in essence, was to approach the work of an 11th century cleric with the respect that it deserved. By taking the proof on its own terms, I could understand why it had been studied for over 800 years and how it fit into the development of a line of philosophical reasoning that continued through to modern times. After writing my defense, I still didn't think the proof was correct, but at least if I had wanted to write a second paper, I would have been able to explain why. I hope that you approach your studies at Brown through your own form of constructive irreverence. That means constantly asking yourself if theories are in fact logical, if evidence in support of those theories is watertight. And it means putting forward new ideas that challenge the accepted wisdom of the day while listening with an open mind to the ideas of others. I encourage you to bring the same independent thought to your engagements outside of the classroom. In assembling a Brown class, we purposefully select students who come from a wide range of backgrounds and have very different ways of looking at the world. If you choose to engage with others with whom you don't agree in an open-minded manner, your education will be greatly enriched. If you choose to associate only with people who share your opinions, you will have squandered a tremendous opportunity for personal development. Universities need constructive irreverence too. We have to challenge ourselves to embrace changing times and new technologies and to address society's concerns about the value and future of higher education. I expect that Brown University as an institution will take on these issues with the same creativity, openness, and thoughtfulness that we demand of our students. Over the coming year, I look forward to working with faculty, administrators, students, and alumni to plan for Brown's future. Together, we'll develop innovative approaches to education and research while remaining true to our core values of independent and rigorous inquiry and to our commitment to serve the community, the nation, and the world. Finally, the world needs constructive irreverence, and specifically, it needs you. The Van Wickle gates will open for you on the day you graduate, I hope with better weather than we have had today, and you will walk back down the hill out into the world. On that day, I hope you will be prepared to change a world that too often resists change and too often tolerates the intolerable. To apply this constructive irreverence to the world and all that lies beyond those gates is your challenge, and I hope your destiny. I focus my remarks on Brown's history, but I want to conclude with a piece of news that's very recent. Only a few weeks ago, a highly sophisticated rover called Curiosity landed on the surface of Mars, ready to begin years of exploration. Curiosity was designed with no small input from the scientists at Brown University, whose research centered with great precision on a small spot on Mars that the rover would not reach until it had traveled 350 million miles and survived what the scientists called, quote, 7 minutes of terror in the final approach. In other words, it was a lot like the college application process. Even after landing, it was important for Curiosity to stay put just for a little while the scientists checked everything out to make sure it was intact. But inevitably, a vehicle named Curiosity was going to start exploring. As one of the lead scientists said, unless the rover roves, we really haven't accomplished anything. So in a similar spirit, I am giving you your official invitation to rove, explore the terra incognita of a university that is 248 years old, but it's always brand new on a day like today. Develop new ideas, build something better than what went before, enjoy your classes, and enjoy each other. More than anything, cultivate the constructive irreverence that brought you this far and will continue to propel you through your years at Brown and into the world that lies just outside of the gates. Thank you very much.
And bring to thine altar our offering of praise. Our hearts swell within us with joyful emotion as the name of Old Brown in loud chorus we raise. The happiest moments of youth's fleeting hours we've passed 'neath the shade of these time-honored walls. And sorrows as transient as April's brief showers have clouded our lives in Brunonia's hall.